Welcome to this week's Movie Math, where Furious 7's box office performance makes the film's plane stunt look like a cakewalk. At the end of just its second weekend, Furious 7 has raced past 800 million worldwide, and the hallowed billion-dollar club is squarely on the horizon. With access to the billion-dollar club pretty much guaranteed at this point, the question now becomes how far will Vin Diesel and his crew surpass $1 billion before they run out of gas? Now, Avatar is close to $3 billion, and Titanic is a little over $2 billion. Stunning box office numbers courtesy of James Cameron. But then we get to more realistic terrain with the Avengers at $1.5 billion. Can Furious 7 get close to that golden number? But that's in the future, well, near future. Right now, let's turn our attention to the impressive numbers Furious 7 is posting today. Domestically, the film passed the 200 million mark on Friday, just 8 days into its release, which is the fastest ever for a Universal film. For comparison, it took The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 9 days to cross the double-century mark domestically. Guardians of the Galaxy, 15 days, Transformers Age of Extinction, 16 days, and Winter Soldier, 17 days. Speaking of Transformers Age of Extinction, that was the only film last year to join the billion-dollar club, thanks to China. And Furious 7 just opened in China on Sunday, where it pulled in the biggest single-day haul ever for the country, 68.8 million. Now industry insiders are wondering if this means Furious 7 will be an even bigger hit in China than Transformers Age of Extinction, which went on to gross an eye-popping 300 million there overall. Elsewhere on planet Earth, Furious 7 also posted impressive numbers in another box office-rich region, Russia, where it nabbed the biggest 4-day opening of all time with 15 million. Worldwide, in just 10 days, Furious 7 has also surpassed the total box office haul of Fast 6, which was the most successful entry in the franchise. As for that telltale second weekend drop, Furious 7 dropped a shade under 60%, and while that's like the one unimpressive thing about its box office performance this weekend, it's still well within the range of normal for a blockbuster film. Universal and Vin Diesel ain't sweating it. But they're also surprisingly cool when it comes to getting Fast and Furious 8 on track. Normally, for a film like this, with a box office performance like this, a studio would be quick to announce sequel plans. Instead, Universal, Diesel, and his co-producer Neil Moritz are taking their sweet time, allowing Warner Brothers to swoop in and try and lure director James Wan away for Aquaman. Wan's Furious 7 contract says he must direct Fast and Furious 8 if Universal so chooses, but they better choose soon. Sure, it's nice to take the time and smell the roses, especially when they're made out of cash, but in today's ultra-competitive movie market, you don't want to be asleep at the wheel. A few people in the industry lately and the media have been complaining about comic book movies, and I imagine movies like Furious 7 sucking up all the oxygen in the room. And they had plenty to complain about this weekend, as Furious 7 not only dominated in theaters, but Netflix's Daredevil surely kept many potential moviegoers at home. In retrospect, Netflix positioned Daredevil quite brilliantly. In a weekend with no major releases, an audience is still hyped after Furious 7's debut last weekend. But since Netflix refuses to release audience numbers, and they're under no obligation to release said numbers, we'll never know for sure if Daredevil is a hit. One might think, though, an overall poor box office weekend like this is at least a hint of the show's success. Yet we had an equally crappy lineup last weekend after the top few films. Plus, hey, considering how worried the movie business is about the TV business, why the heck did they provide a perfect opening weekend for Daredevil in the first place? Yes, the only new wide release this weekend was The Longest Ride, which was short on star power. Clint Eastwood's son, Scott, and Tomorrowland's Britt Robertson failed to capture audience interest, even from Nicholas Sparks fans, as this was one of the worst debuts for his brand. But a weak debut here allowed a nice steady hold for Home, which was able to not only hold on to the #2 spot in its third weekend, but fall just about 30%. Worldwide, the film is up to 242 million, but as we discussed last week, it needs to get into the 400 million range to be considered a success for Dreamworks Animation. Another solid performer this weekend was Woman in Gold, which, like It Follows, capitalized on its headline-making success and limited release. The Helen Mirren and Ryan Reynolds flick went semi-wide, expanding to about 1,500 theaters, resulting in an almost 200% surge. By the way, It Follows also continues to perform well, semi-wide itself, and falling just 20% in its 5th weekend. In the specialty market, Ex Machina had the most impressive debut, proving once again that A24 knows how to launch a movie, and is perhaps building up some brand loyalty itself. Clouds of Sils Maria was less impressive despite Kristen Stewart's recent César win, while Desert Dancer proved that, unfortunately, Middle Eastern culture is still a hard sell here in the US. Either that, or Relativity Media was out of their depth trying to launch a film like this. As for this coming weekend, Furious 7 will hit its first speed bump as Unfriended is expected to make an impressive debut, while Blart Mall Cop 2 is unlikely to match the $31 million debut of the original flick. Child 44 and Monkey Kingdom are expected to both open in the single digits, although in the current box office climate, that will still earn them solid positions in the top 10. And that's the weekend box office. I'm Grace Randolph, and we just did some movie math. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll go beyond the trailer for these other top movies.